Hey, everybody. Welcome to this week's episode of Pax Americana. I'm Julie Roginsky here with Olga Lautman. Olga, it has been a crazy week. I guess the bill finally came due. I know you wrote about this on Unmasking Russia today or last night. I wrote about it also on my Substack. But the betrayal of Ukraine and the Pax Americana more broadly is complete. There is a 28-point peace plan that is going around as a trial balloon. I think the fact that everybody's focused on the Epstein files means that this is the best possible timing for Putin and for Trump to float this. Nobody's paying attention. Nobody in Congress is banging the drum on this. Nobody in the media is paying attention on this, which is just shocking to me. But effectively, it is a peace plan, and I use the word peace loosely, that gives Putin not just everything he's ever asked for, but I mean, legitimately more than he probably could have ever hoped. Just some of the highlights are that he gets all of the Donbass, even parts of it that he has not been able to capture. The Crimean Peninsula, which he effectively took over in 2014, is now recognized by Ukraine as Russian. Ukraine will have to give up a lot of their offensive weapons. Ukraine will have to give up the ability to have a Western peacekeeping force after this quote-unquote ceasefire, which is an indication, if nothing else, that Putin does not intend to stop with just the Donbass. What else am I missing here?
I think the most important, forcing the international community, not Ukraine, but forcing the international community to recognize illegally seized territory as Russian territory.
Yes. And lest people think this is just about Ukraine. This is, first of all, let's just preface by saying the Ukraine Constitution explicitly prohibits any of this from happening. Zelensky and the parliament cannot unilaterally just say, fine, take this land.
Nope.
It is not allowed, not for Crimea, not for the Donbass, not for any part of it. Anything. The only way that legally this can happen if there's an all Ukraine referendum. I mean, literally everybody in Ukraine has to vote on a referendum to cede this land. That is not going to happen. So practically speaking, it's against Ukrainian law for anybody to agree to this, even if they wanted to. But Olga, where I think this is just nuts is that this gives a permission slip to China, to actors in the Middle East, to basically anybody to say, hey, if you want it, come and take it. Come and take it. And more importantly, the security guarantees that this country and Great Britain gave Ukraine back in the 90s in order to give up their weapons, their nuclear weapons, is null and void. So that also tells countries, you better develop nuclear weapons quickly, lest this happen to you. What more is there to say? This is such a betrayal of everything that this country has stood for in our lifetime, in our parents' lifetime, and really in our grandparents' lifetime, that, you know, you sometimes sit around and think about, okay, we elected this buffoon and I can't believe we elected this idiot. But the bill has come due, and he controls the lives and the fates of not just all of us who live in this country, but the world. And the bill has now come due. So I don't, you know, what can you say about this, Olga? I don't know what there is to say.
Well, in reassuring news, none of this is surprising. This is what, the fifth attempt to push a Russian-written plan onto Ukraine, a surrender plan. First of all, this plan is written by Russia. This is first and foremost. People need to understand this plan was written by Russia. This plan was presented to Turkey a few years ago. Absolutely no one took this plan serious, and here they rehashed the plan and handed it off to Witkoff. So, I mean, when it comes to Trump, I'm so used to the betrayal. Ukrainians are used to this betrayal. We know what he's going to do. He attempted to force Ukraine to surrender in February. They had a similar plan when they basically, I think, this plan is actually worse than the previous plan, but the previous plan they try to shove down Ukraine's throat was pretty much the same, that they have to cede territory that Russia doesn't even control. And that they can't ever join NATO, and and on and on and on. This plan literally is the Turkey plan, presented with military reduction, with weapons reduction, no foreign troops in Ukraine and whatnot. So when it comes to Trump, I am absolutely, I saw the plan and I was like, oh, here we go. Trump went through his cycle of Hamas and tariffs and, cycling through various geopolitical issues, and now we're back to Ukraine again. And I mean, the best thing for Ukraine is when he gets occupied something else. Hopefully, he'll move on somewhere else, go bomb Iran or something, keep yourself busy and circle back to this in January or February. What did make me extremely infuriated was the media. I mean, the media, if I saw one more scoop, I mean, people died. Before yesterday, Ukraine was hit with such a barrage of drones and missiles. 26 people were dead. 3 children were dead just in Chernobyl. Okay, and then not to mention, I think altogether 6 children died, were murdered by Russia. And here you have on the American side this idiotic media with this idiotic Axios taking the charge, followed by Political screaming scoop as if this is like a reality show. I mean, you have people who were still buried under rubble, and you have people at Axios and Political turning this into as if like, wow, this is some kind of Beltway insider, scoop. This infuriated me so much. Because one, not only are they pushing this bullshit, 2, it became very clear that Barack Ravid, who reported this to begin with, used Kirill Dmitriev, Putin's bagman and messenger, as his source. And you know how we know? Because Witkoff is such an idiot and doesn't know how to use Twitter, that he thought he was private messaging Barack Ravid to the story, and he ended up posting it to him in a response saying, oh, K must have been the source. K is Kirill Dmitriev. And thanks to, Barack Ravid and Witkoff, we found out that yes, indeed, Dmitriev was in Miami, and besides running around with Representative Luna at the whatever it was Holiday Inn, and her basically kneeling before the Russians and handing them every promise she could, which for a U.S. representative is frankly outrageous, and people used to go to jail for this. That Dmitriev also in Florida huddled with Witkoff for 3 days to basically put together this new pitch. Also notable that Kushner is yet again involved, and we can't forget Kushner and Dmitriev, and their very close relationship, even to the point during COVID when Kushner was working with Dmitriev. Apparently, that's how Russia got the COVID vaccines that Americans couldn't get, and Trump decided to send it to Russia. The Seychelles meeting was, Kushner was involved, and Dmitriev is the one who came with Rick Prince. So you have Kushner involved in this also. So, I mean, to me, that was what was, really annoying. The other thing that went under the radar, and interestingly enough, last week I just wrote a very detailed article on the Russian Orthodox Church, historically to current, that reps of the Russian Orthodox Church showed up at the White House this week. So you have now the Russian Orthodox Church, which is a Russian intelligence operation.
What were they? Who were they meeting with, and what were they doing?
They were meeting with the Faith Office, was set in Paula White's, who handles it, and their main goal was to push anti-Ukrainian, very old age propaganda that Ukrainians are persecuting Orthodox Christians. And so that was there to bring more propaganda into the White House, which is a complete lie because we all see Russia bombing churches across all of Ukraine. So, I mean, if they were so concerned about, religion and churches and orthodoxy, they wouldn't, bomb every church in every single town.
You know who's a fascinating character in all of this to me, and somebody who I think we have not talked about enough because he knows better. Like Wyckoff is a useful idiot. He just is. And the thing about Wyckoff that we need to also know is his son Zach Wyckoff runs World Liberty Financial, which is Trump's crypto fund. And God only knows who's putting money into that. All we know is that Trump's net worth has tripled since he came into office, all due to crypto. So we know there are Middle Eastern interests putting money into that. But we also would love to know, I would love to know, and Steve Witkoff perhaps can lean on his son to tell us which Russian connected people are putting money or entities are putting money into World Liberty Financial. So did you want to add something to that or no?
Yeah, actually, with this Axios reporting, they actually mentioned that Qatar is also going to participate in these discussions. I refuse to call them negotiations or peace talks because Russia invaded a sovereign country. They know where the border is. At any moment, they can get the fuck out of Ukraine. But just for people to know, Qatar is a pipeline of money movement from Russia. And Dmitriev is specifically the key person who moves money from Russia to Qatar. So again, no coincidence that we have Qatar involved and that we have Dmitriev, who's literally the pipeline.
And again, I just want people to understand that this is a man, Steve Witkoff, who is not a government employee. He is a real estate guy, friend of Trump's in New York, and I guess now in Florida, wherever he hangs out now, who in between doing real estate deals is the special envoy for this and also the special envoy for the Middle East. So he's trying to negotiate two massively intractable problems because let's be very clear, my friends, there is no peace in the Middle East, despite what Trump says. If you read even Barack Ravid stuff, you will see that there's fighting in Gaza every single day. There's fighting in southern Lebanon. I mean, it's never ending. Nothing has changed, other than Trump got to wave a piece of paper saying, "Oh yeah, we signed a deal in Sharm el Sheikh," where, by the way, neither Hamas nor Benjamin Netanyahu was present. So I don't know what you're waving around when the two people were at war. Actually weren't there, but okay. That's like me waving a piece of paper right now saying that I won Miss America. That's nice. I never competed, but it's nice that I could wave that piece of paper around. So that's one. Two, the people that we have not the person we've not spoken about, who also apparently had a hand in the stupid, you won't call it a peace deal, the stupid thing that they've now rolled out is Marco Rubio.
Mm-hmm.
And Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, before he was Secretary of State, was one of the biggest Russia hawks in the Senate. I mean, he was really good on this issue. And now, all of a sudden, I guess ambition is a hell of a drug. He's prepared to sell out Ukraine and sell out everything he's ever stood for in order to have Donald Trump wave a piece of paper around saying, "Oh, look at me, I secured peace in Ukraine." I mean, Ukraine didn't need Donald Trump to surrender, right? They could have just done it on their own.
Yeah. I can tell you pink elephants will be falling out of the sky before any of this happens. Trump can, write a whole plan. He could write a 50-point plan and hand off territory of Ukraine. And he can also go to hell with Witkoff and Rubio and the rest, because Ukrainians are not handing over territory. They're just not. They're not handing over territory. And then you have to take into account Europe, who has their own considerations, and know that should Ukraine fall, that you will have drones bombing capitals across Europe very quickly, with Russia having a even bigger force, military force, because they will force any Ukrainians, who fall under Russian control and hostage situation, to go fight Europe, the rest of the Europeans. So this is not happening. Trump can do whatever he wants. I mean, that's why I'm not really concerned,
Well,
because I
I
expect.
am. I am, and I'll tell you why. Because Trump is going to try to force this down Ukraine's throat, and Ukraine's going to say no. And that's going to lead to is potentially Trump freezing weapon sales,
Yeah.
And other aid, and threatening the Europeans. And you already have the ambassador to NATO, the American ambassador to NATO, effectively saying, "Oh, by the way, we want Germany to take over the Supreme Allied Commander post from the United States." I mean, I don't know how much more they can say that they're not interested in remaining in NATO. So, over and over and over again, we have signs that Trump is siding with, whether it's Mohammed bin Salman, who's got blood on his hands, or Vladimir Putin's got blood on his hands, because they're enriching him, right? I mean, I'm sure Trump Tower Moscow will soon be back on the docket. And so it does bother me in that he can do that. I mean, he can cut off arms sales, he can weapons sales, he can certainly cut off military aid and economic aid. He can do a lot to make Europe find this hard. That will happen if the mood strikes him, because he talked about this yesterday at the stupid Saudi conference, the Kennedy Center. I ended 8 wars, soon to be 9. Well, the 9th is this.
Sure.
The 9th is this one, and he wants it, and he's going to do everything he can to make it happen on his terms, which are really Vladimir Putin's terms.
And again, he can do all he wants. Look, Ukrainians already know not to rely on Trump. They got the message loud and clear in February, when Zelensky got thrown out of the Oval Office, which was unprecedented. That an ally, the head of a country who is our ally, gets ambushed and thrown out of the Oval Office. I mean, these things just never happened before. Europe got a wake-up call. And now I keep repeating this is for Europe to handle, because Europe can no longer sit there and say, you know what, the United States is going to do this, and they're going to provide this, and they're going to, import this, and they're going to put this amount of troops in Romania and across the eastern flank. Europe can't do this anymore. Now they have to handle it, and they're more than capable of handling it. And if they don't have incentive enough to, save Ukrainians, they can do it all just from the fact that Russia, since the past 2-3 months, since the actually Alaska summit, has escalated in Europe so much, to the point that there are drones every single day, airports being closed, whether Belgium, Sweden, Germany, Norway, Poland. They just arrested 2 for Russia plot. They hired 2 Ukrainians to go and put a bomb on the rail station. Thank God the 3rd bomb didn't go off and the train didn't fully derail. And it was a rail station that moves weapons to Ukraine. You had this, you have drone incursions, you have, Russia's fighter jets going into NATO airspace, you have surveillance planes. So, I mean, if Europe hasn't gotten the wake-up call yet, the U.S. is not going to be there. We just pulled out troops from Romania and downsized a lot. We plan to pull more U.S. troops out from Europe. Trump has zero interest in maintaining NATO. And I'm sorry, Europe is a big enough continent with enough people and enough money and enough resources and enough defense, manufacturers that have excellent quality weapons, including France and Germany, to have to take this over, and that's it. Because, I mean, whether Ukraine surrenders, or doesn't surrender, Russia is coming for NATO countries next. So it doesn't matter. It's just a matter of, will Russia have X amount of troops, or if Ukraine falls, double that in military power.
And they're getting ready. Look, I mean, the Poles are now instructing their kids on how to handle guns, I think from 8th grade on. I mean, little kids, teenagers. Germany, I believe, is asking at least their boys to register for, I don't know, they're going to start with military service, but at least kind of a selective service thing. I believe they're asking boys, mandating that boys do that by the time they turn 18. I think it's voluntary for girls, but once they turn 18 and they become, women and men, there's a push to do that. They're very realistic. And I've said this before, and I know you agree with me, Olga. People in the United States have never had foreign troops on their soil since the War of 1812, I guess. It's been a long time. And yes, Pearl Harbor was a horrific event, and so was 9/11, but they were one-offs, and it's not like we had to deal with occupations or deal with just mass murder on the kind of scale that Europe has had to deal with throughout their history and in very recent history. And Ukraine is a dot on a map for most of us. Most people here probably couldn't find it on a map, not people who watch the show, but I think in the United States. For people in Poland and for people in the Baltics and for people in Norway and Sweden and Finland and Denmark and Germany, and certainly all of Eastern Europe and Central Europe, it's not a dot on a map. It's a neighbor, and the war is on their border for a lot of these people. I mean, you had Russian drones shooting down something in Ukraine that forced evacuations in Romania. So they're not going to put up with this. And my only fear is that Trump, who of course is completely incurious and also could not find Ukraine on a map, will force them to do that, or at least make their lives a living hell through NATO, through trade deals. I mean, we have a lot of leverage, obviously, we can use against countries. We're the largest economy in the world and the strongest military in the world.
Again, that I feel it's a lot better because he can force, because this is Europe's national security, and every single country knows and has the same assessment, whether it's a year apart, 2 years apart, that Russia will attack a NATO country next. So, no amount of trade deals are going to save anything. If you have Russian drones, blowing up the Eiffel Tower, or hitting German residential buildings or whatnot. And I mean, they are all in the target of Russia. Russia has made it very clear. They have made it very clear. Not only are they not stopping of reclaiming, territory because of their bloody imperial sociopathic mentality, but that they also will seek revenge for UK, for Germany, for Poland, for any country who assisted Ukraine. And the list is long when it comes to Europe, of countries that helped facilitate either weapons shipments, like Poland left there, whatever. I think, like with Poland, I am so grateful. I mean, you have a country who basically said, F Russia, we need to get these weapons to Ukraine, and we will be a transit point. Not that many countries would have, given their country like this, putting themselves at the forefront of moving very sophisticated weapon systems, with Russia monitoring these movements. So, you have this. And then at the same time, look, if Russia was acting, coy and saying, no, we don't want to do anything, it's one thing. Literally every day, I think, what was it, last week? No, we didn't have this discussion. But last week, you had on Kaliningrad, or maybe we did, on Kaliningrad, you had Russia doing exercises, Hamas-style exercises, where they were parachuting down and practicing prisoner capture. Who is on border of Kaliningrad, Lithuania, and Poland? Why would Russia need to practice Hamas-style October 7th exercises of freaking, parachutes in Hamas's case, paragliders landing on territory and seizing prisoners?
And you've said this before, and I don't think it's been said enough. It certainly has never been said anywhere else from what I've read. There's no doubt in my mind, I think not in yours, that Hamas was trained by Russians to be able to do October 7th.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
They did not come up with that on their own. They could not train for that kind of behavior in Gaza. Listen, when I was in Israel a couple months ago, there are spy blip. Gaza, there's nothing that can happen in Gaza like that the Israelis wouldn't know about. So you have to go somewhere else to do it.
After October 7th, I had written an article for SIPA, basically on Russia's ties with Hamas and Hezbollah. They're very long-standing ties. I mean, we're talking since Soviet days, since the foundation of Hamas in the late 80s. And with Hezbollah, and Russia supplying not only weapons to them, but training, moving money for them. Russia's crypto platform, Garantex, prior to October 7th, moved billions of dollars of Hamas money that ended up moving to Hamas. It's a sanctioned crypto platform. Hezbollah and Russia were so close that they had joint logistical centers in Syria and in Iraq. Now picture Russian commanders working jointly with Hezbollah, commanders, sharing intelligence, planning operations within Syria and across the Middle East. I mean, this is how close they were. And I had said the same thing, and we've discussed it many times. There is no way, if people were practicing paragliding in Gaza, somebody would have put, even a social media post about it. I mean, it would just be there. Like you would know if people were practicing. So Hamas definitely didn't, and you cannot get a paraglider, hop into one, never using one, and be able to make your way to your target. So Hamas definitely got training somewhere, a third-party country. And I'm sure Russia was involved just as much as Iran was involved, and just as much as Russia coordinates everything with Iran. So
well, on that note, we could flip over to what we were not here on Tuesday, Olga, because you had something to do, so we could not do our video chapter, I guess, on our series. So do you want to talk a little bit about that? Because I think people probably need to know about this meeting that took place that we wrote about, which you are the expert on. What do you think?
And right before I hop on, I just want to add one more thing on this surrender nonsense. That one thing missing, very critical, is the 21,000 kidnapped Ukrainian children.
Yes.
No one in Ukraine is going to, agree to anything until these 21,000 children are back. And the latest investigation, and PR had published it last month, this is one of many, is that Russia is now taking the kidnapped children who are nearing of age and putting them into military training in order to send them to the front lines to kill Ukrainians. So not only has Russia kidnapped 21,000 children, erased their names, their identities, their language, put them into indoctrination camps to brainwash them, that they are Russian, handed them off to random people while their families, many of them have families in Ukraine, praying every night to get them back. But now the ones who are 16, 17, they are now grabbing them and forcing them through military training. So this was not anywhere in this surrender plan.
Yeah, and I guess I'm old enough to remember 2 weeks ago when Melania Trump wrote a personal letter pleading with Vladimir Putin to return the children.
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
happened?
And if
What
the
happened?
United States wants to hand over 20 plus thousand children of their own to Russia to pacify them, so be it. But they're not going to force another country to say, you know what, these children are kidnapped and we should leave them behind and that's it. No. You fight and look for one kidnapped child. I mean, I'm old enough to remember in US, one child who was kidnapped, gripping the nation, and people, holding vigils and praying and keeping, like on top of like that case. 21,000 children, and this is 21,000 that are documented. Russia themselves claims that they took 700,000, coming from one of the high-level speakers in their Duma. So that is that. Now with the chapter yet for our active measures series, this chapter we carried, the good old influence operations, and in this case, going back to March or May of 2016, Trump did his first foreign policy speech, and he ended up doing it in the Mayflower Hotel.
Mayflower Hotel in
And
Washington, which I don't know if people have ever been. I don't know if you've ever been, Olga. I've stayed there many times. It is a very storied, kind of old school establishment hotel. So if you're going to do a major speech in Washington, that is a good place to do it.
And with that, of course, Kushner, our favorite Russian back channel, handled the event from start to finish, and he tapped at the time Dmitry Simes from the National Center of Interest, National Interest Center. He tapped Dmitry Simes in order to have him help plan. Now, Dmitry Simes, I mean, I will say it, is a Russian agent. End of story. He came from the Soviet Union in the 70s. A source I remember speaking with, actually, who was KGB, said that they attempted to recruit him in Moscow, and the KGB is like, he's already one of ours. And this was in the 70s under the Carter administration. But again, I will say it, I'll take full responsibility for saying this, but he does have all the hallmarks of an agent. It was an open secret in DC for the past several decades that he used his position in, the think tank world and foreign policy world to push Russia's strategic objectives and view of the world. And here he was the one, because, Kushner had no other person to call and say, help me put together, a speech for Trump. For some reason, that was the first name that came on Kushner's cell phone. Let me call Dmitry, ask him to put this event together. Sure enough, they did. With that, of course, Dmitry Simes ended up inviting the U.S. ambassador, the Russian ambassador to U.S. at the time, Kislyak, to this speech. Trump, of course, carried on with, what at that time was shocking, and unfortunately, this time we're basically too numb to it now, of basically, abandoning the NATO alliance and having a different world order, one that is viewable with Russia, and of course, resetting relations, because Trump couldn't, for the life of him, understand why the U.S., and this is as Russia is actively attacking our election, he couldn't understand why Russia should, why we can't be friends. So that was the first foreign policy speech. Kushner was involved in this. Kislyak was there. Fast forward, Kislyak and Lavrov were one of the first, actually, I think it was the first time that they visited the Oval Office after Trump became president. And it just shows you this was a typical influence operation. This was, how Russia operates. Here they have several paths going through Trump's campaign, whether it was Kushner, Manafort, getting adjacent people like Dmitry Simes on board. Carter Page, George Papadopoulos, whoever you name it. Russia used several paths. And then Trump. Next week, we'll be talking about the infamous Trump Tower meeting. But they used many paths to get Trump elected. Their only goal was to make sure that Trump was elected, that Hillary Clinton would never see office. And this was just another proof in of now how many chapters have we written of how Russia used these operations to attack our 2016 election. And the last thing I'll say, sadly, we have to spend our time, our weekends, writing about this to rehash this because one, the media is not covering it. And two, you have literally some banana republic grand jury, and we see well, got a taste of what Trump's grand juries are like yesterday with the Comey situation. But there's a Banana Republic grand jury assembled in Florida, basically seeking to indict Comey, Brannon, Clapper, and every single person who investigated Russia's attack on 2016.
I mean, look, you have a president who's totally unhinged right now. I don't know if people have been following what he's been doing in Truth Social the last 12 to 18 hours, but he's been calling for the deaths of Democrats. Legitimately thinks that they are traitors and need to be executed. This is not a well man. He is somebody who has absolute power in his mind. He is somebody who does not value human life, which is, I'm not sure that I would have thought that about him, not because I think he values anything, but I think I kind of always assumed he was a bit of a coward and would not necessarily push the button to blow up people. He's doing that off the coast of Venezuela all the time, so obviously he doesn't care. And ultimately, you're talking about somebody who's willing to sacrifice not just Ukraine, not just Europe, but his own people, if that's what it takes. The 2016 election, which we have covered in minute detail. We're coming almost to a close now. I think this is going to be chapter 17 on Monday that we're publishing, Olga. 17 chapters. I mean, book length rehash of exactly what happened in the 2016 election. He does not care. He does not care. The only goal is to stay in power. And the people he respects are the people like him who don't abide by constitutional norms, who don't abide by historic precedent, people like Vladimir Putin. And if you are somebody who wonders what Putin has on him, I don't know. I don't think any of us knows. But I'll tell you what Putin has on him that we all know. Just the very fact that he's Vladimir Putin and does not care and executes his opponents and jails them and grifts off the state and exercises absolute power and takes what he wants, including territory of neighboring countries, that's very appealing to Donald Trump. And I think that's something to consider, that it doesn't really matter what else Putin has on him. The very fact that Putin is who he is what Donald Trump admires. Putin could not care less about Russian citizens. He's sending them to the meat grinder every single day in Ukraine. He does not care. And if anybody in the United States thinks that Trump won't do the same to us, you have not been paying attention.
100%. And, look, Trump started his, life in Queens, but also in Brooklyn, actually, in my old neighborhood, with his father with Neptune apartment buildings. And I mean, at that time, he was involved with Italian mafia. It's very well documented. And frankly, anyone who lived in New York City, you couldn't do anything without the Italian mafia. I mean, literally, especially if you were in real estate and did construction, they each family controlled whether it was, concrete, or whether it was, uh, how you call it, waste management, like the garbage removal service, whatever it was, they all controlled it. So you had to do it. By the early 80s, he got involved with Russian mafia. Again, very well documented. I mean, I literally went through every single apartment, he called, that he had sold, everywhere, whether it's UN, Trump World Tower overlooking UN, where I believe it was 80% Russian occupancy, to his Fifth Avenue, where you had everything from Russian intelligence officials to Russian oligarchs to Russian mafia people, not only living there but running operations out of it. Whether you go to Sunny Isle, I mean, this gets even more insane because you literally have, one guy who, GRU Spetsnaz, which is equivalent to our special forces, who in 2016, not only did he own apartments in Soho, but he call it, decided to do bikers for Trump, resembling Putin's night wolves biking operation. I won't even call it a gang, because they're an operation. He sends them abroad in order to stir chaos, and they worked very closely with Wagner mercenaries and whatnot. So, and Sunny Isles, I mean, literally 1,300 apartments sold, with no detail to who, cash. So you could just imagine. And the host of residents there. So with that said, he, at first I also thought, oh, Russia has something on it, and this goes beyond Putin. This is like back to Soviet days, that they have files on him and whatnot. But then after I realized, what? I think he just enjoys it. He enjoys, this type of power. Now, I grew up around the Russian mafia. I mean, this was my neighborhood. And I can tell you, like, some people just genuinely enjoy having that power, ordering someone to be, taken care of. You don't even have to speak. You could just wave your hand and say, this, is a problem, get rid of it. And that's it. And having that ultimate power. And this is why, he enjoy getting along with the Cosa Nostra families, and then eventually with the Russian mafia, and then a mixture, because you had the Russian mafia actually learning a lot from the five families in New York and partnering with them in the late 70s and 80s. This is what he enjoys. He enjoys that ultimate power. He enjoys being a mob boss. You see him with Khashoggi, and MBS there. You saw the ABC reporter ask him about Khashoggi, a very valid question. Why do we have, first of all, a murderer who in our White House? And Trump was, I mean, I've never seen him this happy. Honestly, he like literally was touching MBS. He couldn't get enough of him. And she asked him about Khashoggi. In his rant, what stuck out to me? The fact that he said, you're being insubordinate.
That's exactly what stuck out to me. He does not understand that in this country, journalists are not subordinate to the government. But of course, in Mohammed bin Salman's country, if you're an insubordinate journalist, you get hacked to death with a bone saw, like Jamal Khashoggi did. And the owner of the newspaper where Jamal Khashoggi published his articles that were critical of Saudi Arabia, which was the Washington Post, owned by Jeff Bezos, had the entire contents of his phone hacked by Mohammed bin Salman and sold or given to the National Enquirer. Why? Because he was upset that Bezos was publishing Khashoggi in the Washington Post. That is what dictators do. In Russia, if you are a journalist and you're insubordinate, you end up dead, shot or poisoned or tossed out of a window. And Donald Trump doesn't understand why that's not the case here, which is why he immediately told Brendan Carr, his flunky at the FCC, to take away ABC's licenses.
Yep. Yeah.
That's
So
exactly what stood
he,
out to me too. He does not understand this country. He is not of this country. As much as he hates immigrants and trashes them all the time, I'm an immigrant, Olga, you are too. And we both understand something about this country that he never will, which is that we do not bend the knee to a dictator. That's not the American way. Donald Trump, who considers himself the biggest American on earth, and if you ever drive past the stupid Bedminster golf course, you will see the biggest American flag on earth flying over the highway there, which I have to do every week when I go out to Pennsylvania. But that flag means nothing to him. He has no concept, none, zero, of what this country stands for if he thinks that Mary Bruce at ABC needs to be subordinate to him.
yeah, yeah. And I mean, this is, again, we have gotten too used to this insanity. And, I think we need to start pulling back and calling these things out because you can't get immune to this. And this is the whole point of dictators. They want you to get immune to this. Like, oh, this is just Trump, oh, well, whatever. No, not whatever. You don't tell a journalist they're being insubordinate, and you don't I mean, can you imagine the parallels? Zelensky, who is fighting a genocidal invader, um, gets ambushed in the White House, yelled at, thrown out of the White House, and someone who ordered not only the assassination, but I mean, to the point they still can't recover Khashoggi's body because he was dismembered in so many pieces. So the most heinous killing. And he gets a horse carriage and fighter jets and, a sale of fighter jets, not only flying around, but the sale of fighter jets. This whole Oval Office meeting, a whole state dinner. I mean, the thing was so disgusting. And I mean, really, this should be a wake up call, another one for people in this country that this is who Trump wants to align with: murderers and dictators and thugs. He doesn't care about our national security, even with the fighter jets that they're selling to, that they finalized a deal to the Saudis. You had our own intelligence under him come out with an assessment. They're worried that, this will end up, our newest fighter jets, this technology will end up in China's hands because they're so close with each other, the Saudis and the Chinese, and work together. Do you think he cares about our national security? Absolutely not. He doesn't care about our people. He doesn't care about anything about America. He doesn't know what America is. He doesn't understand America, and nor will he ever, because he sees the world from the view of a dictator. What can I siphon from the country? How much power can I have? How long can I stay in power? And what, who are my inner circle that will profit and benefit off of, dealing with me. That's all he cares.
Yeah, I mean, it's fascinating to see. Well, fascinating is not the word. I guess academically fascinating, but horrifying if you live it, which we all do, to see that this country understood exactly who Donald Trump was back in the first term and decided that they wanted to vote for that again. But all of this is connected, and I think the problem is that when you are in mainstream media, you don't really have time to do these kinds of analyses. So you have, okay, Epstein cover up and healthcare and Khashoggi and MBS's royal treatment and the Ukraine peace deal. But nobody ever connects those dots. Nobody ever connects those dots, ever, which is that Donald Trump has had state dinners and effectively royal meetings, rolling out the red carpet, which Marines were on their hands and knees doing, not for the King of England, who's been our ally, or his country's been, he's the head of state, so his country's been our ally for decades, generations, not for anybody else, but for Vladimir Putin and Mohammed bin Salman. Why? We could go into how much money Trump is making off of Saudi Arabia that we know about through his family, and that's just what we know about before we get to the crypto stuff. We don't know what he's doing in Russia, but I can guarantee you there's some good Russian money going into that crypto fund. And it is not a coincidence that that crypto fund is being run by Steve Witkoff's son.
Yeah. And we don't have to, theorize, whatever, we'll pick that about this, because I remember a few months ago when Witkoff traveled to one of his meetings with Putin. He had several. Hypothesized, there you go.
Yeah.
When Witkoff traveled to one of his meetings with Putin, out of several, I mean, not only, yesterday, the first thing I thought when I saw him with the thinking he's sending a DM and ended up posting publicly, was how he took a translator who sat next to him. He thought the U.S. Embassy sent in. Meanwhile, the translator was a Russian intelligence agent from SVR. She was identified, very close, I've seen in many photos prior with Narishkin, and other. Narishkin is the head of Russia's SVR, which is the Foreign Intelligence Service, equivalent to CIA. But before those meetings, I remember Putin, there was several articles that came in that Putin had a meeting with all his business leaders and instructed them that their top priority besides defense, their top priority besides defense was to come up with good deals for Trump. Whether it's minerals, whether it's oil, whatever it is, to put together packages that they can offer Trump. At the same time, they also dangle the Trump Tower again. So, I mean, Putin himself is, this is top priority to try to buy Trump. Which he really doesn't have to try hard, because Trump naturally is drawn to Russia. I mean, he's always been. And that's it. And at the same time, they keep sending warning shots, because a lot of what you're seeing online, especially with Epstein and the disinformation, specifically like the past week, a lot of it is real people, and a lot of it you see is Russian bots and trolls who are pushing this divide between America first, MAGA, make Israel great again, MAGA, and you see like this big fighting. I went over the weekend and saw the first thing I saw on my feed was fighting between all of them on the far right side. So at the same time, Russia is, sending warning shots to Trump too, that we can make your life hell.
Yeah. Yep. All right. On that note, we've been going for about an hour, so we want to thank everybody for joining us. Keep your eye on this, because it is all interconnected. I mean, everything is just tremendously parallel as to what's happening. And the common denominator is money and authoritarianism, which are the two things that Trump cares about. And those are the two types of leaders that he is attracted to. And of course, if you're an authoritarian, you have all the money that you need, because you just pilfer the state, as we all remember when Saudi Arabia's sovereign wealth fund did not want to give $2 billion to Jared Kushner because he'd never run a private equity fund in his life. Mohammed bin Salman overruled them. That's what dictators do. And now Trump wants to set up a sovereign wealth fund here in the United States. Where do you think is going to happen, and where do you think that money is going to go? On that note, we will see everybody here. Well, not here, but we'll see everybody back in your inboxes and Substack on Monday for the 17th. Oh, I cannot believe the 17th chapter of Active Measures. We're going to focus on the infamous Trump Tower meeting. Finally, it took us 17 chapters to work up to that. That's the one that people assume was the big Russian interference play it was just one out of a zillion, many. So we'll see you in your inboxes on Monday. We will see you back for active measures on Substack on Tuesday. And we will see everybody back here on Thursday at 11 a.m. Eastern. Thank you so much for joining us, and have a great day, everybody. Bye.
Bye.